I am thrilled to kick off this session on the impact of culture, cultural fluency, and mentorship on today's workplace teams. Many aspects of work and the workplace has been forever changed, and challenges to the human side of hospitality are evolving. As some return to their former offices, others are opting to work from home. It's just one of the many adjustments. We're joined today by experienced professionals as they explore 3 significant factors influencing how we manage effectively in today's dynamic workplace. We are joined by Joelle Crawford, who is a speaker, author, and consultant. We have Jerry Fernandez, president and founder of the Multicultural Food Service and Hospitality Alliance, MHFA. And we have Chip Wade, president and chief operating officer of Union Square Hospitality Group. We are thrilled to hear from each of them. If you want to learn more about them after the session, please visit the SHFM website or app and read their bios. Towards the end of the presentation, all the presenters will be joined for a group Q&A, so please save your questions until then. So first off, I'd like to welcome Jerry Fernandez to kick off today's session as he will dive into cultural fluency. What is cultural fluency, and how can we organizations build it? Please welcome Jerry.
Thank you. Thank you, Genevieve. Thank you, everyone. Nice for you to make time after lunch to come and spend some time with us and hang out. So I got only about 10 to 12 minutes to warm you up, and what I'm going to talk a little bit about is cultural fluency is what we all need as leaders to be effective in engaging people, recruiting people, and caring for people as hospitality professionals. I'm going to share some stories because everybody in this room has a story. In fact, you have multiple stories. And one of the problems is that we sometimes define people by a single story, which you're going to see from one of my slides here. So a little bit about me. I'm a native of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I'm on the South Shore. One of 6 kids. I'm a little knucklehead. Got kicked out of high school for smoking something that is now legal. That was one of my stories, okay? But we all have many stories. I'm also a culinary grad from Johnson & Wales, so you culinary professionals will know I'm one of you. I opened restaurants and opened the first Capitol Grill, so you operators know I'm one of you as well, okay? And so I have multiple aspects of who I am. But when you look at me culturally, how do you see me? What do you think? People hear Fernandez, he must be Dominican, Puerto Rican, or something. Never would they pick me out to be Cape Verdean, but that, in fact, is my heritage. So when you look at this next slide, are we seeing slides here? No. Help me, there you go. Very nice. When you look at this next slide, there are 4 images of individuals. And so what do you make of these individuals? What story are you telling yourself about who they are, where they're from, what language they speak, how do they self-identify? Is anybody up there look to you like they might be transgender? See, if you don't have the ability to begin to understand who people are and who they might be, and understand the cues and be able to say, well, not quite sure. They look to be African American, but they might be Latino, black and Latino, all one and the same, okay? So there's lots of elements of who we are and what people bring to the table, and there are many stories. What we have to do is get comfortable and familiar with those stories. So I want to share a story with you from a young woman, Chimamanda Adichie. She's a Nigerian author, and she tells a TED Talk. If you haven't seen it, you should go see it. The power of a single story. And one of the stories she tells is she grew up in a middle-class Nigerian family, which means they had house servants. And she had a young boy who was the house boy, as they called him, and he was responsible for cleaning up and doing things. And she always felt pity for him because they would give food and donations and clothes to his family. They came from a poor village. And so she had a very defined view of who he was. And one day her mom took her to his village and they met his brother and realized that he made this beautiful basket. And she was shocked because her single vision, her single story was that they were poor and they could never create anything. And so it changed the whole view. And she goes on to give you many other examples as a black woman from Africa. You know, that country that we think they run around with rings in their nose and they need help from the white population to overcome all the challenges that Africa has. We don't realize there's 56 countries in Africa. But if you haven't seen the TED Talk, I encourage you to check it out, because she'll give you a lot more insight into how we all put people in boxes by telling one single story about them. So my challenge is to talk to you about cultural fluency. What is fluency? It's being able to communicate to another group of individuals and that they receive what you say in the same way that you meant it. Sometimes you say this and I hear that. There's nothing wrong with the Confederate flag. I don't understand what the problem is, says one person. But I over here, as a person of color with a wife from Savannah, Georgia, have a very different viewpoint on that. So how have you defined yourself? How have you helped yourself with recruiting or retention when you have succeeded in alienating someone because you have a single vision of the world and not sensitive to how they might see the world? So there's lots of benefits to cultural fluency. It helps the communicators to be understood. How many of you know have ever heard someone say, she just don't get it, or he just don't get it? We know what it is, right? You don't want to be the person who doesn't get it, that brand who doesn't get it, because then you can't recruit people. So there's lots of benefits to this. You build awareness, you'll understand about where you should go, where you shouldn't go, and how you should do it. So when we look at why this fluency piece matters, it's because of equity, retention, and how we're going to get the most out of every group. If I think you understand me, you recognize who I am culturally, and you respect me, and you're sensitive to my needs, I'm going to give you discretionary effort. That's called profit. But if I think you don't get it, the word gets around really quickly. You know that new guy? Boy, he said something stupid. My goodness. He said, man, I don't care what lifestyle you live. Well, as soon as you say lifestyle, anybody who's from the LGBTQ community knows you don't get it. And you don't realize that there's a bunch of people who are in the closet, and now everybody knows that you don't get it. And now you have lost your effectiveness. So there's lots of reasons we do this. I'll tell you another quick story. Dr. Robert Rodriguez, he's an author of Latino Talent. He tells this great story. So he was working with a client, and they're at a trade show, and one of these corporate executives come up. He's got a big title. He's got his thing. Hey, is this the place here? I'm here to recruit Mexicans. And so all the Latinos are like, what the hell did he just say? Excuse me? He said, yeah, I'm here to come here to recruit Mexicans. He said, you mean Latinos, Hispanic? No, yeah, Mexicans, you know, the same thing. Now, if that's your brand, how did you just brand yourself? Because I'll tell you right now, that's a 10-year story they're still telling. And how does that damage your brand and your ability? Our industry cannot afford to make these mistakes. We have to get much better at how we do this. So how do we do it? How do we build cultural fluency? You have to play offense. You have to go. How many of you, raise your hands, have ever been to a black African-American church? Raise your hand. Well, a lot more white folks been there than I ever thought. That's great. Well, if you have not steeped yourself into the culture of people you're trying to recruit, if you didn't grow up with Asians and you don't understand that they're not all from China, okay? If you didn't grow up in a gay community and you can't understand what the Q means or the IA means, you need some help. You need to get some friends to help coach you, because these things are necessary. And the way you do that is you play offense. You go to those events. You don't send your junior leaders to attend the conference. You go to the conference from the start to the end. And you have your ears and your eyes wide open. You say, listen, I don't have a very high level of cultural knowledge of this group, and I want to know you better. I want to be a great leader. I'm building my cultural IQ. What do I need to know about your community so I can add value? When a white man or a white woman says that, or anybody who's outside that group speaks with authority and legitimacy and authenticity that I really want to know so I can do a better job and making sure that everybody gets a chance to contribute at a high level, that's when you make the magic happen. So let me give you a model that we developed a few years ago. Oh shoot, things are falling down. A few years ago with SMU. Some of you know that Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas. They have a lot of international students who go to SMU from the Middle East, from Asia, from Latin America, and quite a few here from the US. And they had a problem because the number of these international students, and how many of you know that at college and universities, international students pay full fare? No discounts, right? That's he always raising his hand, that's it. Full fare, so they're very valuable students. So when you got about 10 students who are saying, we're thinking of transferring to another school, you get the administration's attention pretty quickly. Well, that's what was happening because the faculty, so what do you think the faculty looks like at SMU? Senior, tenured faculty, what do you think they look like? Say that again, white cowboys you said? I don't know about cowboys, but they definitely were white. 65 and old, you got a little bald head, a little middle like me, you know, that kind of thing. And the young people are saying they don't feel me, they don't understand me. And so what we did is we worked with them and they came up with this, and then we borrowed it from them and we tested it. There were 5 basic things. The last one on the bottom really relates to what you could say to people right now. But these are the 5 pieces that, where am I from? So where am I from? I'm from Cape Verde. I'm a black American of Cape Verdean descent. I identify as that. What can you call me? I don't have a problem whether you call me black or African American, it doesn't bother me. But Jamaicans, don't call them African Americans, it pisses them off, all right? Understanding these cultural elements about how people like to be referred to, how you talk to them, how you engage them. How do I see the world? Well, if you know that my wife is from Savannah, Georgia, you know she might have a different view on the Confederate flag than maybe you do. You also know that she grew up in an all-black side of town, so she got different views on the popo. That would be the police, okay? Lots of these things are what you see. So each of these points, what's my communication style? So a bunch of brothers get together and why are you yelling? We're not yelling in my house, we're just expressing our point of view, right? Okay? Men can go pound on those. But can a woman do that? What do they call you? The B word, right? Okay, we know about all these things. So the last couple of things are important as well. What myths and realities about my culture? So you say, listen, John, I didn't grow up in an Asian community. What are the myths that people have around you in the company? And what things do we say that kind of tick you off that we need to stop doing? When you start asking those questions with authenticity, people will tell you the truth. And the last thing is about what things will shut me down and end the conversation. And I put that last bullet about COVID because when somebody tells me COVID's fake news, I just lost my oldest sister to COVID on August 21st. She was a big anti-vaxxer. And she's not here, and that ain't fake news. That's the 5th family member I lost. So understand who you're talking to, what their cultural insights are, what their thoughts and feelings might be. Learn how to ask questions, lean in so you can get educated, and you too will have cultural fluency. Thank you.
Is this mic work? This working? Yeah, okay.
Oh.
And next, we'll hear about the role workplace culture plays and how do we as individuals and leaders operate differently in this new culture. I'd like to welcome Chip Wade, President and Chief Operating Officer, Union Square Hospitality Group. Chip.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Can we give Jerry one more round of applause? All right, so I thought Jerry did a fantastic job, and he kind of shared with all of you at a very high level this notion of cultural fluency. And so I'm here just to share briefly our story and how we at Union Square Hospitality Group, how we think about culture and the role that it plays in our organization. And so what I will share with you is this model that we talk a lot about. And what you can see is this notion of we think about culture and enlightened hospitality. And Danny Meyer, who started the company, we spent a lot of time talking about enlightened hospitality, what it means. And so many companies, you may have heard the term conscious capitalism, we use enlightened hospitality. And in this model, we have 5 stakeholders. And it always begins with our workforce, our employees. So the employee, we are an employee first, an employee-centric organization. It then talks about the guests, the communities, our suppliers, and then our partners, right? And so everything that we do with regard to driving a strong and vibrant culture is centered on this model that we have, and again, the model that we call enlightened hospitality. I put up there 2 quick quotes that that we talk about and that we use often. Hospitality exists. It's in our name, hospitality. It exists when you believe that the other person is on your side. And so what that means for us, for our business at Union Square Events, our partners, when we're dealing with a vendor, when it deals with a community member, how we make them feel is really important to us, and we think long-term it helps the culture. Next thing I'll share with you is this model, which is essentially a three-legged stool model, right? It's this notion of culture and hospitality tied together. There are three primary components. There's the work environment, the people factor, and then the systems and the structure. And what I would submit to you is you need all three legs to be strong and sturdy in order for someone to sit on a stool. Right? And so let me unpack a little bit real quickly. When we think about the work environment at USHG, it's really about what we create for our employees, how we make them feel. What you can see here is two images. One, Danny and I have a practice 4 or 5 times a year where we will have these sessions called Chat with Chip. The name aside, is the notion is we really wanted to spend meaningful time during the pandemic and hold these 60-minute, 90-minute sessions. This topic was on race and diversity and the impact of race in our business. So we have these sessions called Chat with Chip, and we do them, again, 5, 6 times a year, all designed to solicit feedback from our workforce, learn from them and share from them. And on the right of that, you can see some other formats and engagement levels that we've done for our workforce. All of this information is on our website. It is designed, as I said, to make sure that we stay highly engaged and highly connected with our employees. The environment is so important to us. How they come to work, our position on working from home, the work environment of where they work, how we celebrate together as a family is critically important. The last photo, and I suspect all of you do this, right? We are very consistent. We have holiday, Thanksgiving celebrations at our home offices. And we encourage our employees at all levels to cook their favorite dish, their favorite meal. And we just have this massive potluck Thanksgiving Day celebration. We usually do it the Tuesday or Wednesday before Thanksgiving. We close the office at noon. And then we're just there breaking bread and laughing and having a good time. And we do something similar for Christmas. And we also encourage our restaurants and our Union Square event team to do the same. The environment is the reason why people come to work at USHG. The people factor, let's move on to that. So as we think about the second leg of the stool, it's the people factor. And as we think about people, there's really two components as we're looking for talent. One is the technical capabilities. We call that the 49%. That's what you do. So whether you're a maitre d' or manager or executive chef, if you're running events for us, we want the individual to be competent, and that's what we call the 49%. How you deliver a bottle of wine to a party of 6, the service aspects. It could be a role at the home office, so 49%. 51%, that's your heart. That's what we want people to bring, and it's really hard to measure, right? You can see the steps of service and determine whether or not that's happening to the level or standard that you have or you don't. But on the 51%, that's the emotional capabilities. And as you can see, that's optimism and warmth, that's curiosity, that's so important, a really strong work ethic with accountability. And so when we think about people make up the culture. We want to make sure we have a healthy blend of 49% of the capabilities, the competencies to do the role, and then the 51%, I call it the heart, but it's all those things that are at times difficult to measure. The next on the people chart is it may be hard to see, but these are our diversity and inclusion metrics. We publicize this, it's on our website. We want to make sure that our employees at every level hold us accountability. This is all part of the culture. We went on this journey shortly after the untimely and sad murder of George Floyd that we said we wanted to make sure that our company looked like the cities where we operate. Primarily, we are a New York-based company, but we also have a business in DC. Two very diverse cities. And so at every level of the organization, we wanted to make sure that representation looked like the cities where we operated. And I'm very proud to say that we are making meaningful progress, and in many cases, we're surpassing that progress, both from a diversity perspective, from a pay and equity perspective. Of my 5 senior C-level leaders, every one of them female, and one of Asian descent, one of Persian descent. And this is, okay, thank you. Thank you, I appreciate that. We want to make sure that we're walking our talk. And I happen to believe that when you have a leadership team that is made up of really competent and strong, diverse people, then the organization gets better. Okay, so I'll keep moving on. And I'll talk a little bit about the structure. That's the last piece. So remember, there's 3 legs of the stool. I've talked a little bit about the people for sure. This is the last one, which is the structure. And what is the structure that the organization has, whether it's around compensation or, in this case, there's 2 examples. One, in the middle of the pandemic, we wanted to create a relief fund, a financial relief fund for our organization. And I suspect many of you have like programs where employees can donate $1 or $4 or $10 or whatever the case may be, and then we can provide financial assistance during periods of hardship. And so during the pandemic, we raised a little north of $2 million, and we granted out about $1.8 million in an effort to help our employees. And the good news is we've kept that structure. And if an employee has a fire at their apartment in Brooklyn or the Bronx, or if someone's mother needs help just paying the electric bill, then that is why that HUGS, that USHG Relief Fund, is there. And it's part of the structure, and it's what we do every single day. We had another structure that was a legacy compensation model for our restaurants, where we became a non-tipping model, right? And that model worked well for a period of time, but it kind of ran its course. And so I share this with you just as an example to say the structure that you build, the structure that we build, whether it's a technology roadmap, an HR policy, a compensation policy, all of those feed into the notion of building a very strong and a very vibrant culture. And so with that, I thank you for your time. I look forward to the Q&A portion, and I'll turn it back over to Genevieve. Thank you. Yep.
Up next, we're going to dive into important areas of investment in our people and ourselves as we become better leaders. And what role can mentoring play? I'd like to welcome Joelle Crawford, speaker, author, and consultant, to the stage. Please give her a boot for her boot, and we'll get going.
I want us to think about the legacy. Legacy. Deep Thoughts by Joelle Crawford. What do you want your legacy to be? Sometimes leaving a legacy can be active, and sometimes it can be passive. I knew what I wanted to do on the first day I started working, and it was all because I was in new hire orientation, looking at this person at the front of the room, and I was like, I want to be that guy. He had no idea what a legacy he was leaving. If I could go into a time machine and run up to him on my first day of work, I would say, Mike, keep doing what you're doing, but I wanted to tell you really quickly. What you're doing right now is inspiring me to professionally stalk you, then ask you to be my mentor, and then I'm gonna follow you for 6 years, asking you how to get on your team, and then I'm gonna get on your team, and then you're gonna succession plan me into your role, and then I'm gonna take over your team and lead it to be the #1 team in the country, leading 30,000 employees. I'm gonna leave the business and then start my own business and coach and consult thousands of employees, write a best-selling book because of what you're doing today. Thank you. You'd probably think I was crazy. And not everyone's going to get that sneak peek into the future. But what I want you to think about today is that how every day, every action that you can do can leave a lasting impact, a lasting impression on who you are supporting in your organizations. It could be active or passive, and that can be done through mentorship. It's really important for you to understand that this is the first time in history that 5 generations are in the workplace. 5 generations. And when we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, a lot of times we talk about the HR-ish stuff, the protected characteristics, which are all very important, like race and gender and age and sexual orientation, right? But let's think a little bit outside of that box and think about the diversity of thought and ideas and experiences. It doesn't matter whether you are at the end or the beginning of this list. There's always something for you to learn from one another. So I challenge you to support yourselves around that. It reminds me of the time when I had my associate director left the organization. I was an HR business partner. My associate director left the business, and I was the only one there, and I had to hire a peer and my boss. What? And once they were in place, I had to mentor them in their roles because I was the only one with the experience on the team. Those 2 people were in 2 different generational groups than I was. But we leaned on each other because it was the success of the business and the organization. It wasn't about, well, when I was your age, it wasn't about that. It was about making sure that the business and the team were successful. So when you're thinking about mentorship, it's not always from top down. It could be from side to side and up and down and across. It crosses all generations. Think about the cultural fluency. Think of generations being another culture. Surround yourself with people from different groups, and you never know what you're going to learn. Now, when I came into my own and developed my own coaching strategy, it's a 4-step process. Mentorship is something that I find so integral in the development of leadership. And you don't have to be a manager to be a leader, right? So in order to be the best leader you can, I came up with this action planning methodology called RISE. And I'm going to talk about this. Mentoring isn't a handout, it's a hand up. Mentorship is so important because it increases retention. People feel more engaged. And it's worked so well that sometimes you end up learning more from the mentee than the vice versa, the situation. All right, so first step in rising. If you want to be a mentor, and it doesn't matter what leadership position you have, right? Because you don't have to be a manager to be a leader. You can be a mentor to whomever you want. But when you're thinking about rising in mentorship, you need to reflect first. Think about how you can best support this person. If somebody came running up to you and said, I'd like you to be my mentor. Please, won't you be my mentor? Yes? If somebody comes up and asks you to be their mentor, think about that. And think about this $1 million question. How can I best support this person? How can I set the intention of collaboration and support? And then once you've reflected on this, also sink into the why. Again, remember that legacy that you want to leave behind. Why do I want to do this? Why am I doing this? Because we need to retain our talent. I'm not going to be here forever. Unless you're a vampire or a cyborg, we're not going to be in this world forever, right? So we want to make sure that we're thinking about the legacy we want to leave. Identify that talent. It's not always going to be the person who's knocking it out of the park. It might be somebody who needs a little extra attention. I'm not talking about the problem children. I'm talking about people you see some potential in. Perhaps reframing certain behaviors as opportunities to look and pay more attention to them. If they're not coming to work on time, attendance is an issue, maybe I need to look at that a little bit better. Maybe I need to look at this deeper. So mind for talent. Also identify the goals. What are the goals of this mentee? What would they like to do to succeed? What does success look like? Not only in their role, but in general. What is the success of a mentorship relationship going to look like? Strategize. And this is really important. You've got to make the time. Think about it this way, and I know some of you are like, make the time, Joyo. I barely have time to be here at this conference. Think Dr. Seuss when it comes to mentorship. Dr. Seuss? What are you talking about? Dr. Seuss. I can mentor in a box. I can mentor with a fox. I can mentor at a bar. I can mentor in a car. I can mentor here or there. I can mentor anywhere. Think about the creative ways where you can mentor. You don't have to sit at a table right in front of each other. It can be done in 5 minutes. Little bursts of mentorship can make a difference and create a welcoming environment. If you were making the time to be there for this mentee, turn off your phones. Come on camera if you're Zooming with someone. If you're in the kitchen, stop and look what you're doing. Look at the person. Come see eye to eye with them. Execute. Hold each other accountable. If you're making the time and you miss it, reschedule. When you make mistakes, you're not supposed to have the answers for everybody. But also, the mentee is supposed to come to you. So hold them accountable. If they're skipping meetings, find out what's going on. And here's another part of execution, is it where you need to take action. You may need a little push. Take action. Help them get along. Celebrate those mini milestones, not the big gigundo goals that are set, but the small mini milestones, and celebrate them. Then they're going to learn how to do that on their own. Show up. So if you're looking to be a mentee, and again, we can all stand to learn something no matter what phase in our career we're in. Think about this. Reflect on what success looks like for you. What legacy do I want to leave behind? Where do I want to go? Is there something that I really, really enjoy that makes my mouth water? What's that why? What gets you out of bed in the morning? So reflect on that. And think about who you want to mentor you. Keep it simple. Go for the lowest hanging fruit, your manager. Some of you are like, my manager? No way. It is their job. You know that, right? Like, it's their job to mentor you? Yeah, smile and nod, yeah. It's important. Coaching upward is the only way I was able to get where I got. People don't know where you're going unless you tell them. Think of your manager or your mentor like the GPS in the car, and you're in the driver's seat. And you know where you're going, but sometimes you take a wrong turn, right? So think about you're driving in your career car and take the wrong turn. What does the GPS do? It recalculates the route, right? Well, same thing goes for your career. If your mentor is helping you along the way, you've got to tell them you've changed the address. They might be going down a different highway than yours. So again, you got to tell them. They don't know. And also, learn the art of professional stalking. If you don't know who to pick as a mentor, if there's somebody that you hear that's speaking and it really gets you going, or you read an article, or you see somebody doing something, reach out to them. What's the worst that could happen? People love talking about themselves. They're flattery operated, just like me. Ask them if you want to talk to them. I'd like to talk a little bit more about how you got started in that department or your career. Professionally stalk them. It can be successful. Strategize, get on their calendar, be proactive, and come to the table with questions and solutions, not just problems. That is Leadership 101, y'all. Again, hold each other accountable. You notice that as you're executing as a mentor or a mentee, you gotta hold each other accountable. If they start being too busy to meet with you, remind them that they too are leaving a legacy for you to grow and succeed. Keep them honest. And also keep in touch. Don't dine and dash. Don't just get all that mentor goodness and take off. Legacy. What is the lasting impression that you want to leave behind? It can be active, it can be passive through mentorship, being a mentee or a mentor. It begins and it ends with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Joelle. And now I am sure you have questions for our phenomenal speakers today. So I would like to invite all of them back, who they quickly joined, to answer your questions. We're going to do a quick Q&A. I know we have some microphones out in the field. Who wants to kick us off? Don't be shy. You're not a shy group.
$100 bill for the first question.
Ooh.
I always work with students, doesn't work.
Chip has one. Anybody over? Oh, you're the mic man. Owen, you have a question?
Can you hear me right?
Yep.
We can hear
You
you.
can always hear Owen.
So, first of all, thank you very much for your time today. I really enjoyed each of your conversations, and now I'm going to use this anyway. Jerry, I listened to you speak, and very natural and very welcoming and right on the edge. But how do I kind of have those opening conversations with people within my organization about, let me learn more culturally about yourself without aggravating them? I think, that's that step, that's where I'm hesitant. Some people I can do it with, other ones I'm like, hey, how do I ask, maybe that female, maybe it's Asian, help me understand without offending.
Well, I think first you have to be honest, and I often ask for permission. Listen, I'm on a cultural journey. I took a cultural intelligence class. I went to a conference. I heard some great speaker, and I'm motivated to become a better leader. And I didn't grow up in communities of this type or that type. And are you okay if I ask you some questions? If you're not, fine, move on. Gotta have enough confidence in yourself that, listen, I know what I'm trying to do for the right reason. I'm trying to get good or smart or capable about it. And so somebody will answer. You'll get some people who'll give you attitude. That's more about them than it is about you. But you gotta get you gotta jump in the pool. You can't learn to swim from the beach, You gotta get in, which means, I don't know much about disability. I'm gonna go to a disability conference and I'm gonna be freaked out because I'm gonna say the wrong thing and I'm touching people's wheelchairs or whatever. But I'm gonna say, listen, I don't know what I don't know, but I wanna learn, will you help me? How many times are people gonna say no to that? If you do it with authenticity, and you're sincere and you don't run out the door the first time you make a mistake, people will give you grace if you do, man. If you make a mistake, I apologize. I don't know, that's why I'm here. So hopefully that helps.
That was great. Thank you. Who else? Who has another question? Can I ask a question? Chip, you talked about the three-legged stool. What if I only have two legs?
That's a very good question. I'm going to answer that question by maybe telling the story. I'm old enough to remember in the mid-90s I had an assignment in Boston. In Boston there was a retail chain called Lechmere's. And Lechmere's, I see a couple of heads nodding. There were 40 or 50 Lechmere's. They were the dominant retailer for electronics and stereo equipment. You could buy some other things. And I remember when this other chain called Circuit City was coming into Boston. And people, for those of you who are 30 or younger, you've never heard of either one of those chains. And there's a story behind that, but Lechmere was the dominant player for the longest time. Circuit City came, and people in Boston, my wife's from Boston, are saying, who are these guys? They'll never last. If you're missing one leg of the stool, then what ultimately will happen is the constituents that you serve, your employees first and your leaders first, will not feel valued, appreciated, cared for, and loved. And then they will leave. And so what I want all of you to imagine is get that vision of the stool back into your head, right? And so you've got the three legs. The stool, the seat, is your brand. So imagine USHG being the brand that you sit on. Well, if you're missing a leg, the brand's going to fall off. And you will no longer be relevant for the workforce, your employees first and foremost, and then your customers.
Can I add something quick to that, Chip? Because what you say, it's inconsistent with Danny Meyer to be that great at food and hospitality and be shitty at the people side. It's like Disney.
So eloquently said. Thank you.
It's like Disney. All that's is real, right?
Yeah.
Disney got to be good with kids.
Yeah.
I mean, it just would not work if you didn't have the incongruent.
Yeah.
So if you, especially you leaders, you senior white male leaders, you driving a bus. You know it. Make sure you're driving in the right direction. And open up the door so you can hear some of this other comments and find out what people are doing, because I'm doing what I'm doing, trying to change the industry because white men like you saw something in it and said, I'm gonna support that thing and I'm gonna write the check. And I told you a story earlier today that this is at our first one of our conferences in San Diego years ago. And we had 600 people, we had all these fancy speakers, and we had Gary Rockin and Juan Williams and all these people, all these big shots there, and CEO of Hyatt, blah, blah, blah. And now we're celebrating because our thing went really well. I busted my butt on that. One of our board members is the CEO of a company, white male. We get in the elevator, he got a little bit of glow on because we had a few red wines. He's a big wine drinker. He reaches in his pocket and pulls out a folded piece of paper and puts it in my pocket. He said, Jerry, this is for you. Not for the organization, this is for you. We need you to do what you're doing. I found out when I went to my room it was a $5,000 check for me in 2001 when I was just doing this and I had no money. And he said, that's for you. How long do you think that loyalty exists? Because this guy said, I believe in you. I'll be telling that story till they put me in a box. And he doesn't even know it. But that's what I'm talking about, the power of, see, it's just inconsistent if you say one thing and you don't do the other. And we have the ability to re-recruit our entire workforce, who's run away from us, by the way. We just did a research project with Cornell and the National Restaurant Association, and the research will come out in January. And those people ain't coming back. So we better keep on, to your point, we better mentor them and keep the people we got.
Gotta do it. Plant those seeds.
We had a question out there. I see them all waving with those questions. They can't
Just
wait.
actually a comment, and this is a take on Dr. Seuss. Joel, will you be my mentor?
Absolutely.
Oh, that's good. That is good.
I love that. That's fantastic.
Yes.
Oh, I love it.
Any other poets in the room? Who's next? Over there?
So this question is for Joel. I just want to ask you, so there's a lot of young professionals who are here,
Yes.
or the next generation coming in, and there's a moment where we have to stand on our own 2 feet and walk into a room and present our own findings.
Yes.
How do you foster with your mentees that type of leadership and confidence so that they can walk into a room without you?
Wow, that is a great question. So how do you walk into a room? How do I get you all lifted and risen, right? So that you feel confident and competent. First thing I would remind you before you walk into that room is that people would not have hired you or selected you to be on that committee if they didn't believe in you. You've got to put that same belief in yourself. All you're doing is just showing your worth on a platform. That's all it is. That's it. And I know that's probably very hard to deal with because you've got all the butterflies, but the butterflies really just mean that you care. That's all that is. That energy just means that you care. But you've got to believe in yourself just as much as those people did believing in you to get you where you are.
Good.
Thank you. Thanks for
Thank
that
you.
question.
Who else?
I think I see a hand up in the back. No? Maybe.
Chip, you see one?
Come on, you next Jenners. Come on, next Jenners, help us out.
I've got my glasses on and I still can't
There we
see.
go.
There we go, there you go. I knew it. It's always the young people who help us out, that's for sure.
Generational diversity.
Hi there. Thank you guys. So just tagging on about sort of being a young professional and,
Yes.
and a lot of the groups here, you talk about managing up. How do we communicate to people who maybe aren't in this room, who haven't sort of bought into these strategies, and how do we have those conversations?
Yeah, so thank you for that question, because there are times where people aren't as open to the coaching upwards as you would like them to be. And I have it's just one of those things that I had in my mind. I was laser focused on my destination. So you need to put your blinders on a little bit and put yourself on autopilot. So, okay, this person, you're not listening to what I'm saying, so I'm going to go up here. I'm going to keep going up until somebody hears me and sees me and understands that I want to bring value to this organization. Because walking out of that door is of value to this organization. So you don't want to bring it to that place, right? You don't want to be like, I'm out, peace out, right? So what you want to do is continue to keep climbing up. Perfect story. I wanted to get into learning and development. That guy that was mentoring me, he didn't have the time anymore. He was doing his own thing. So I basically went to another mentor in a different department who knows the head of the department of learning and development, the head of learning and development. I said, I don't know how else to get into this department. She said, talk to her. Talk to the head of the department. And I was just like, you know what? Okay, I think I'm going to do that. I called up, she comes to visit, she made some site visits, and I made a point to get on her calendar. And I said, what do I have to do? Do I have to kill somebody to get into this department? I have done everything that, that people have possibly told me to do. And she gave me a few great tips. And I took those tips to heart. And you know what ended up happening? She became my sponsor. And who better to sponsor you to get anywhere you need to go than the head of the department? So I say keep climbing until you get that no. Keep climbing. Don't stop. Put those blinders on. If that is the heat-seeking missile that you are to getting to your career, don't stop until you reach the stars.
I'll add two things from my career at General Mills, because MFHA didn't exist. I was an early career professional. I came up with the idea and pitched it. And here I am 25 years later still doing it. The job didn't exist, and I knew I had a dead end. I didn't have a PhD. I don't have an MBA. I didn't belong in the group I was in. I said I got to create something. So solve a problem.
Yep.
Find a problem that needs to be solved and volunteer to solve it.
Yep.
Even if they didn't ask you for your input. And the other thing is strategic volunteering. I learned that by volunteering in the community, the United Way comes by and Rick Post said, I need someone to take the lead, right? Right? If that person takes the lead on the United Way and kicks butt, you get exposure, you make the boss look good, now all of a sudden people are returning your phone call.
Absolutely.
So I think, for me, I did it in the community. I got FaceTime with the president of another division, and they said, do you know this dude, this Massachusetts kid with his hands going all fast, talking all fast? What's that? And that's how I got exposure. And then I got a chance for people to listen to me. They didn't see me just in my kitchen whites. They saw me as somebody who could make a presentation. But the thing that really got me noticed was they were trying to recruit more African Americans into the R&D facility, and there was 5 or 6 white guys over there talking about how they're going to do it. And I said, well, you got 6 or 7 black guys right here. Why don't you talk to us and we'll give you some ideas on how you can do that. And we did it. They go, well, who makes you think you can do that? And I said, well, because of the skin I'm in, maybe I got some insight. As it turned out, they were very successful, and that opened the door for me. So look for ways to help solve. B, how do you increase the contribution of you and your group to the company? How do, as a woman, as a young woman, how can I increase my contribution to the company?
Be an entrepreneur.
Now, what individual is going to say no to that? They can't. But then you got to follow up.
Absolutely. I agree with you, Jerry. And I want to piggyback on that is that the volunteer information is also experience. So don't, just because you're not paid to do something doesn't mean it doesn't count as experience. And visibility is what you're tapping into. It's so important to keep in touch with these people too that you have connected with, so that you can continue to have those visibility projects. Be an entrepreneur.
Handwritten notes.
Yep. Thank you notes that are handwritten.
They remember you.
All of it. It's so important.
Just one more. I know we're getting close.
We're getting close.
I think there's one more question.
She's over there.
I love this.
I have one. I'm not wearing a jacket, but if you want to put a $5,000 check in here, I would be happy to take it, just so everyone knows.
I've got all kinds of pockets, right? That's amazing.
I'll make a pocket. My question's for Chip, but I feel like probably everyone might have something to offer this. You're 49-51% versus some of the hiring staff shortages. Have you been forced to maybe swing those numbers in different ways? I ask, well, that's what, I could keep going, but I think you got where I'm going with it.
It's a great question. And the answer is no. And clearly we have been challenged, just like all of you here in the audience, in all restaurant, hospitality, food service companies. We've been challenged from a staffing perspective. Early on when we started rebuilding our staff, to Danny's credit, he got a coffee mug for our chief people officer and our head recruiter. And on the mug it said it had 3 simple letters, DFS. And so he opens the box, and we're all there at a staff meeting, and these 2 leaders are looking at these coffee mugs, DFS. And he said, as we get back into interviewing, from a busser all the way up to executive chef, don't effing settle. And he was very, very clear on, we're not going to change the culture. We're not going to change our behaviors and our tactics, because hospitality is in our name. And so if we aspire to get back, because we knew that the pandemic was not going to end the world, if you will, right? And we knew that the city was going to come back, and we knew that we're going to need to hire people. And if you remind people not to settle, I confidently believe, and we're starting to see that, we're coming out of the pandemic, and it's long from over, an organization that's stronger. We're more confident, and we are more diverse than when the pandemic began. So has it been easy? The answer is an emphatic no, but we have decided not to settle. Great question.
And that's a great place to leave it. Yeah. So with that said, it looks like that is all the time we have today. Thank you so much to our speakers for providing great insight. And now I'd like to welcome our SHFM National President, Damien, back up to the stage. Thank you, Damien, for some closing response.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joelle, Jerry, and Chip, for a fascinating session. And thank you, Genevieve, for leading us through that session.